Have you noticed something strange in your recent Social Security payments? Maybe the amount didn't change much, or maybe it did, without any clear explanation. But what if I told you there's a quiet new rule being tested, a 10% rule, that could change how your Social Security benefits are calculated, adjusted, or even reduced? That's right, this rule affects all Social Security checks, including retirees, SSDI recipients, spousal and survivor benefits, and even those on SSI. And while it's not officially labeled a law just yet, the systems are already shifting in that direction. In this video, we're going to walk through exactly what this 10% rule is, how it works, and what it means for your money. And near the end, I'll reveal a little-known pilot program that could shake the foundation of how your benefits are determined going forward, and it's already in play. So don't click away, you'll want to hear what's coming. Let's begin by asking a direct question. Would you allow the government to automatically recalculate your Social Security check every year if they said it would balance inflation and income shifts more fairly? Most people would be skeptical, and for good reason. That's essentially what the 10% rule is trying to implement, but it's being packaged in bureaucratic language like income fluctuation buffers, cost of living response triggers, and predictive benefit modeling. At the core of this idea is a new threshold. If your financial data changes by 10% or more, the Social Security Administration, SSA, can reassess your benefits. This might mean a larger check, or a smaller one. And in some cases, it could mean triggering a full review of your eligibility. To understand how we got here, we need to zoom out a bit. Over the past few years, inflation has hit record highs, COLA increases have fluctuated dramatically, and millions of Americans have been pushed to the financial edge. Social Security, originally designed as a safety net, is now being asked to adjust quickly and accurately to fast-changing economic conditions. The problem? The system is still running on outdated models that were built for a much slower pace of change. That's why the SSA, with help from Treasury and the IRS, is moving toward automated, real-time benefit recalculation. And the 10% rule is one of the earliest and most significant parts of this effort. So how does it work in practice? Imagine your income from other sources, a part-time job, a pension, or rental property, goes up or down by 10% in a given year. Under the proposed model, that change could automatically trigger a recalculation of your Social Security benefits. The same applies to your cost of living. If you move from a high-expense city like San Francisco to a rural town in Kansas and your monthly expenses drop significantly, your benefits could be reviewed to adjust for local economic conditions. But wait, isn't that what COLA is for? Yes, but the new model claims that COLA doesn't go far enough in addressing income variability and regional inflation differences. In other words, they want to track your personal economy, not just the national one. Now, here's where it starts to get more complicated. The SSA already shares data with the IRS, Medicare, and other federal agencies. But now, they're building algorithms that track income changes across time, not just year to year, but month to month. If your reported income, spending, or asset holdings shift by 10% or more, even temporarily, it could flag your account. That might trigger a recalculation, or at the very least, a review. And this isn't just theoretical. Several states are already involved in quiet test programs where SSDI and SSI recipients are being automatically flagged for CDRs, continuing disability reviews, simply because of a 10% income shift. The scary part? You may not even realize you've triggered the rule. For example, let's say you withdraw money from a retirement account. That withdrawal, even if used for medical expenses, could push your annual income up by more than 10%. The result? Your benefits could be temporarily reduced, taxed at a higher rate, or pushed into review without warning. The same goes if your rent increases and you start receiving assistance from a family member. That informal support could be considered in-kind income, again, potentially triggering a flag under the new 10% rule framework. Let's also consider spousal and survivor benefits. Under the traditional model, your benefit amount is based on your spouse's or deceased partner's earnings record. But now, even those calculations may be subject to recalibration if the system detects income shifts or cost of living changes that cross that 10% threshold. So if your financial picture shifts, even if it's not your fault, your payments could shift, too. And remember, this is all being done digitally. There may not be a human analyst reviewing your case. It could be a software program deciding your financial fate based on algorithms and data trends. And we're not even at the biggest twist yet. There's talk of introducing automatic tax withholding for recipients who see income growth above 10%, even if that income is one-time, like from selling a car, getting a small inheritance, or cashing out a bond. Right now, many beneficiaries can choose whether or not to withhold taxes from their Social Security checks. But under the evolving 10% rule framework, the SSA could default to withholding if it detects that your income exceeds a certain limit, a change that could leave many recipients with unexpectedly smaller checks and no warning. That hidden deduction? It's not speculation, it's buried in Section 3.4 of the SSA's 2025 Modernization Report, labeled innocently as Geo-Economic Adjustment Proposals. What does that mean in plain English? It means they're exploring automatic payment modifications based on the cost of living in your exact area, not just your state, but your zip code. So if you live in an area classified as economically stable or overcompensated by federal benchmarks, you could receive less. In other words, people living in slightly more affluent or low inflation areas might see smaller cost of living adjustments or benefit increases than someone living just a few miles away in a priority hardship zone. This isn't just theory. Pilot data is already being pulled from zip codes in Texas, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That's real-time testing, already in motion. Now here's the kicker, those zip code deductions might already be reflected in some people's checks. If you've noticed that your 2025 COLA boost didn't quite match your neighbors, even if you're in the same state, this may be the reason. There's no official notification. It's happening quietly, embedded in back-end calculations that you need a data analyst to untangle. And if the 10% rule becomes standard, this zip code logic could evolve into a baseline payment modifier, meaning your entire benefit could be lower just because your area is statistically better off, even if you personally are not. But we're not done. This rule doesn't just stop at retirement or disability benefits, it reaches all the way into Medicare premiums and low-income support programs. Remember how we talked about sudden income changes triggering recalculations? That applies to Medicare Part B and D as well. Under the 10% rule, any notable change in income could lead to your Part B premium jumping mid-year. Imagine thinking your costs are locked in, then suddenly getting a notice that $40 or $60 more is being deducted from your Social Security payment because your prior year income changed by just a few $1,000s, or worse, the IRS updated a record that you weren't even aware of. And for those who qualify for Medicare Extra Help or Medicaid crossover benefits, a shift of 10% in your income, or even estimated expenses, might push you out of eligibility entirely. This is especially dangerous for seniors whose finances fluctuate due to inconsistent retirement fund withdrawals, one-time gifts from children, or small inheritances. The system doesn't always distinguish between a sustainable income and a one-time event. It just sees the numbers and reacts. Now, what about people receiving both SSDI and SSI, dual beneficiaries? They're particularly vulnerable under this system. Why? Because SSI eligibility is based on strict monthly income limits, while SSDI considers both income and disability status. A temporary increase in earnings might not disqualify someone from SSDI, but it can instantly suspend or reduce their SSI payment. Worse, if the increase is flagged late, like after quarterly IRS syncing, you might be told you were overpaid and now owe the SSA money back. This is already happening in pilot regions, with data showing a 23% increase in overpayment letters among dual beneficiaries since Q4 2024. And the SSA's response? That it's part of the efficiency improvement process. Let's talk about what this means in real-world scenarios. Let's say you sell your car for $6,000 because you can't drive anymore and want to use the funds for a medical scooter. That one-time income spike could flag a 10% increase, triggering a benefit hold, a Medicare premium bump, or even a full disability review. Or say you're renting out your basement and make a few thousand over the year, the system could recalculate your housing costs and say you no longer qualify for the same SSI rate. The worst part? The reviews aren't always instant. They can happen months later, retroactively, with repayment demands attached. And that brings us to another hidden aspect: predictive review flags. These are AI-based alerts built into SSA's new infrastructure. If your financial behavior, income spikes, zip code, age, medical code history matches certain patterns, you may be selected for deeper reviews before the 10% change even happens. That means the system might preemptively flag you based on projected risk. Not your actual error. Your potential to create one. Let that sink in. Now here's something even more startling: the IRS is planning to increase the frequency of income data sharing with the SSA. Instead of annual updates, we could be looking at quarterly or even monthly syncs. What does that mean for you? If your income fluctuates even slightly each season, as it does for millions of seniors who rely on part-time work, investments, or variable pensions, your benefits could become just as unpredictable. Each quarter might bring a different check. This level of instability could make budgeting impossible for people already living on the edge. And there's still more. Inside the SSA's 2025 enforcement roadmap is something labeled behavioral response testing. It's exactly what it sounds like. They're studying how beneficiaries respond when their benefits are reduced, paused, or reviewed. They're analyzing appeal times, repayment rates, and even psychological data like call volume spikes and complaint trends. So not only are they experimenting with the 10% rule, they're monitoring how you respond to it. In short, they're not just adjusting the system, they're testing your tolerance for instability. So where does this all go from here? The 10% rule isn't a one-time change. It's part of a massive shift toward automated governance, where algorithms monitor your income, location, expenses, and behavior to constantly recalculate your benefits. You might wake up one morning and see a deposit that's $40 lower than last month, no warning, no explanation. And unless you dig into every page of your My Social Security account, you may never know why. This is the future being built, quietly, without congressional debate, under the name of efficiency. And now, that final reveal I promised: the SSA has quietly contracted a third-party data analytics firm, the same one used by credit bureaus, to map out benefit risk scores. Think of it like a credit score, but for your Social Security check. If your score is too unstable, your benefits may face more frequent reviews, payment holds, or even delays. This isn't public knowledge, yet. But documentation obtained through the Federal Acquisition Register confirms the project is already funded and under development through fiscal year 2026. So if you're wondering why your check is suddenly smaller, your review came earlier than expected, or your COLA bump didn't feel like a bump at all, now you know. The 10% rule isn't just a possibility. It's already here. And unless we demand clarity, transparency, and legal protections, it could silently rewrite everything we thought we knew about retirement security in America. Stay informed. Watch your numbers. And don't assume the system has your back, because these days, it's watching you more closely than ever.